Welcome, my students, to this e-learning program on TV and radio. My name is Nathaniel James Yayok. I'm here to take you on metalwork. The topic we are going to consider today is lathe machine. Now, we have some outline that we shall be considering from the beginning to the end of our lesson. They are as follows. We'll consider the concept or the definition of the lathe machine, the parts of the lathe machine, the various operations that can be carried out using the lathe machine. Now, let's go straight to the definition of the lathe machine. The lathe machine is a machine tool that is used for producing both internal and external cylindrical surfaces. This can only be achieved by holding the workpiece on a revolving choke that is located at the headstock. As the result of the movement of the workpiece that is held on the choke, the workpiece gets in contact with the cutting tool, thereby causing material removal. This material removal comes in form of the chips. Now, let's see some of the types of the lathe machine that we have. One, we have the CenterLate machine, which is also known as the general purpose lathe machine. We have the turret lathe machine. We have the capstan lathe. And of course, we have the special purpose lathe machine. Now, the common and the most useful lathe among all of these I've mentioned is the CenterLate, because the CenterLate machine is so very important in the tool room because it performs other operations that other lathe machine cannot perform. And so we shall center our discussion only on the CenterLate machine. Now let's move straight to the various parts of the lathe machine. Here we have the diagram showing the schematic arrangement of the CenterLate machine with various parts being indicated. But for the sake of this class, we shall consider 4 main parts of the lathe machine. They are the headstock, we have the tailstock, we have the bed, and of course, we have the carriage. Now, looking at the diagram, the headstock is located at the left-hand side of the lathe machine. It contains the spindle and a combination of gears that are incorporated in the machine, which rotate the spindle. And the headstock units includes some vital parts. One, we have the control lever that you use to change the suitable gear while working with the lathe machine. We have the electric motor. The electric motor is the one that supplies the power and is located beneath the headstock. It's connected with the V-belt via a pulley that moves the spindle. The spindle is the one that the choke is tied on, and the workpiece rotates with it together. So the third part that the headstock has is the spindle nose, which projects out from the headstock housing. Choke, face plate, or angle plate can be clamped or mounted on the spindle nose. The next part of the lathe machine is the tailstock. The tailstock contains a taper bore spindle in which one of the center. I said earlier on that the CenterLate machine is a center because it operates on two centers, the headstock center and the tailstock center. So in this case, the tailstock is located at the right-hand side of the lathe machine. And you can turn work on the lathe machine using a center that is mounted or slotted in the spindle nose of the tailstock. Now, other tools can be mounted at the tailstock spindle, like the choke and the taper shank. These are attachments that we use in conjunction with the spindle of the tailstock end, where we obtain other operations. Now, the tailstock carries a hand wheel, which when turned counterclockwise, or it ejects the center that is mounted on it. These attachments that are fixed in the spindle, they are temporary attachments that can be removed at any time. So once the wheel, the handle that is located at the tailstock end, is moved or is turned anti-clockwise, it ejects the tool that is mounted on the spindle, either a Morse taper shank, a Morse taper drill, or a center. Now, we move to the next part of the lathe, which is the bed. The bed is made up of cast iron, and it is on the bed that the lathe machine is built upon. Every part of the lathe machine is lying on the bed. The tailstock, the headstock, and what we call the carriage is lie upon the bed. Now, when you look at the diagram, there is a connection from the tailstock to the headstock, and there is a line, or we call it ray. It's a way where the carriage and the tailstock and the headstock that is located at the right-hand side are mounted upon. These ways are of two, they have two types, the flat and the V. The two types that are located in the bed is for the carriage to maintain a steady while moving, because the carriage moves along the bed. Likewise, the tailstock moves along the bed. Now let's talk about the carriage. The carriage is made up of two major parts. There are two basic parts that are located on the carriage. One, we have the saddle and the apron. The carriage runs lengthwise along the bed. It runs along the bed between the headstock center and the tailstock center. Now, the saddle carries other parts on it. They are the crosslight, the compound light, and the tool post. They are all on the saddle. While the carriage moves, the longitudinal movement of the carriage on the bed makes the workpiece to be turned on the headstock end. Now, this is the carriage. What I mean by the longitudinal movement or lengthwise movement is the movement of the carriage along the bed, leaving the headstock end to the tailstock end, or from the tailstock end to the headstock end. That is the movement I'm referring to. And with this movement, it is when the carriage is able to move along with the component on top of it that, of course, the tool is held on the tool post that brings about material removal from the workpiece, making it in form of chips and giving you the desired diameter or length of turning operation you are to obtain at the end. Let's move to carriage. Now, on the carriage, while the apron, we talk about the saddle, the apron contains the mechanism and type of gears which transmit the motion. It transmits the motion from the headstock down to the fish shaft. There is a shaft. So then let's go back to the diagram. There is a shaft that is called the fish shaft. This shaft is connected right from the headstock end, which has a gear that controls it, enabling the carriage to move. Now, if you must obtain any operation on the lathe machine, the carriage must move in conjunction with the fish shaft before you can be able to obtain any desired work finish on the lathe. Let's go back to the carriage. Now, like I said earlier on, the carriage, the Crosslight from the fish shaft, the tool post is mounted on the compound rest and is used to hold the workpiece. Now, all of these are incorporated on what we refer to as the carriage, because it's carrying all the parts along whenever you are to operate on it. Of course, the last one is the tool post, which I said is mounted on top of the compound slide. Whenever the compound slide moves, the cutting tool moves along with it, and then cutting the workpiece to the desired shape or size. Let's go to the next. Now, the next topic is the lathe operation. Or the next subtopic is the lathe operation. Now, there are various types of operations that can be done using the lathe machine. Because the lathe machine is so important in the tool room, sometimes we refer it to be the father of all machine tools that are in the tool room. And so because of that, there are so many operations that can be undertaken on it. Let me start with highlighting the operations that can be carried out. We have one, facing. Facing is one operation that can be carried out on the lathe machine. Now, it's the process of squaring the end of the workpiece. Now, this is done by traveling the compound slide, the Crosslight, across the bed. Now, the movement of the tool perpendicularly to the workpiece, to the revolving workpiece that is held on the chuck, gives you the squaring of the end of the workpiece, and that is referred to as facing. It's a simple operation that you have to carry out before embarking on any work to be done on the workpiece. The next one is parallel turning. Parallel turning. Now, this operation is an operation that is carried out on the lathe to reduce the diameter of the shaft that is held on the chuck. Sometimes you may need to reduce a certain diameter. For instance, you have a diameter of a shaft of 60 millimeter diameter, and you want to turn it to reduce it to 45 or 30 or 20, as the case may be. You need this operation to be able to reduce that diameter of the shaft to that required diameter you need. And this can be carried out along the workpiece by the help of the apron, which is moving along the bed. The relationship of the two now is going lengthwise on the bed, thereby creating that material removal on the workpiece, giving you the required diameter, which is referred to as parallel turning. And there is a particular tool that is used to carry out this operation. It's called the turning tool. Now, the next point is parting off. Parting off. Parting off is making a recess. This operation or this process is very important because it helps one even to cut off a particular length of workpiece while working on the lathe. It's just an impression that is made on the lathe machine using a particular tool that is called parting off tool. The next is boring. Boring as an operation on the lathe machine is simply to enlarge the diameter of an existing hole. Before you carry out boring operation, we know there are other machines that are used to carry out several operations. But in this context, we assume that the machine that is used to drill, which is the drilling machine, have already drilled the hole. Now you are taking it, perhaps the diameter of what you require is bigger than the size of the drilling bits that you want to use. So you take it to the lathe machine and use the boring tool. Now, the operation of boring is similar to parallel turning, but in this case, it is internally done because we are trying to expand or enlarge an existing hole. But while the parallel turning is only talking about the external diameter, reducing the external diameter, but the movement of the tool on the carriage that get in contact with the revolving workpiece at the headstock center is exactly the same with boring operation. And of course, each of these has a particular special tool that is used to carry out such operation, which is the boring tool. The next one is Nolan. Nolan, as an operation on the CenterLate, is making an impression. Making an impression in this context means there are tools that we use in engineering that sometimes you need to have a firm grip of the tool while operating with the tool, either loosening or tightening a particular knot or screw. Now, for you to have a firm grip, it is made in such a way that there is impression. There are lines crossing each other that enables one to have a firm grip of the workpiece or the tool that you are handling. That is what we refer to as Nolan operation. Then we have another topic, another point on the lathe operation, which is taper turning. Taper turning on the lathe. Quite often, you will need to turn what we call a conical. And when I say conical here, is something that has two sides. The one side is bigger than the other side. Not like the parallel turning, where all the diameter are the same. In conical shape, one end, the diameter is greater than the other end. Now, sometimes you need to carry out such operations on the lathe machine. Now, we do this on the CenterLate machine to produce surfaces. This process is known as taper turning. There are three main methods or ways that we can achieve taper turning on the lathe machine. The first one, we call it form tool. The form tool is where the operator forms his tool to suit the kind of taper turning operation that he wants to do. And it's the easiest and the simplest form of turning operation on the lathe, because you just grind your tool to the required angle and then form it closer to the workpiece. This type of operation is done on a very short taper work. Then the next one is the compound slide method. Now, like I said, the compound slide is located at the apron. Okay? Now, the compound slide can be offsetted. What I mean by offsetted, it will go off center. Now, offsetting the compound slide will give you an angle. Once that angle is created, the cutting tool is also set at that angle because it's mounted, the cutting tool is mounted on a tool post. So, If that happens, once the machine is switched on and is moving along the bed, it gives you taper turning. That is, conical shape is produced. The next one is offsetting the tailstock. Like I said on the sketch, at the right-hand side of the lathe machine, there is a part that is referred to as tailstock. Now, the tailstock can also be offsetted, and this operation is only mainly for a longer size of workpiece. It is not suitable to turn or to have a conical short workpiece, but rather you do this operation in a very long length of a workpiece on the lathe machine, just by setting off the tailstock. Now, in addition, we have other operations that can also be carried out on the lathe. They are threading. We cut threads on the lathe machine. It's a very good and recruitive exercise that can be carried out on the lathe machine. We also have drilling. Like we are all aware, drilling is an operation on its own, and it has a machine that carries out such operation. But the lathe machine silenced the use of the drilling machine in this context. Now, these are diagrams showing some lathe operations that we have talked earlier on. The first one is the parting off. The tool is rightly in the workpiece, trying to create that recess. If you look at the tool, it cuts between the workpiece. And if this process continues, this workpiece, the first half will be divided. It has to cut off. So that's why I said it's very good exercise, because you can use it to cut a large diameter of workpiece that ordinarily you may have to use the hacksaw or other means to cut it off. Then the next one is the boring. Now, the workpiece is already held on the chalk, and here we have the boring tool. Now, if you look at the boring tool, it's showing us that it is working internally. That's why we have section lines. The movement, the longitudinal movement, I said earlier on, of the cutting tool moves along and is done internally, creating a reduction of size, or sorry, increasing the size of the diameter internally. The next one is Nolan. This, of course, we have the Nolan tool. The workpiece is here. This is the workpiece. It's a very long one, and at the right end is the tailstock spindle that is holding the workpiece. Like I said earlier on, if you are working on the lathe and you have to work between the two centers, the headstock center and the tailstock center, the workpiece is in between the two centers, while the tool is used on the workpiece. Now, if you look at the diagram here, there is an impression. This impression is what we refer to as Nolan. Then, of course, the first one, the down one there is the facing operation with an attachment of half center. Then we have drilling. At the end, the drilling is produced by a drill slotted at the spindle of the tailstock, and you turn the hand wheel to obtain your drilling proper. In summary, the lathe operation is done on a machine tool called lathe machine in order to produce cylindrical surfaces, either internally or externally, using cutting tool, various cutting tools. Then we have the types of lathe. One, we have the CenterLate, the capstan lathe, the turret. These are the lathe. Of course, we have the special purpose lathe machine. And the main part of the lathe machine are the bed, the headstock, the carriage, and the tailstock. The operations that can be carried out on the lathe machine are facing, parting off, drilling, taper turning, and Nolan, of course, boring. My viewers, students at home, I have this assignment for you. Number 1, using a sketch, identify 3 lathe operations. 2, name 4 important parts of the CenterLate machine and explain just 3. Number 3, state 2 advantages of CenterLate machine over other lathes. Number 4, mention 4 items found on the carriage. Thank you for listening. If you have any question or any complaint or any help, this is the number you call or WhatsApp or text 081 30 86 32 82. Thank you.